Right. Good afternoon. This is Ifan from the Strategic Day Trader, and this is your market wrap for March 4th, 2020. Q's up 4%, SPY up a little bit more at 4.1. We got about 2 minutes left until the close, okay? Now this here, line in the sand here over yesterday's high, does look like it may get taken out. If that gets taken out, we are going to be bullish. So that may happen kind of first thing tomorrow morning. Doesn't look like it's going to happen here in the last 2 minutes, although looked like it was getting pretty close. All right, so we're looking more and more bullish here. Was neutral coming into today, and so neutral to bullish going into tomorrow. Now, as I kind of discussed with the room here, if you were bullish coming into today off of this hourly uptrend, hourly pullback, you would be more correct, right? I came in neutral because of the conflict that we had, which is hourly looking higher, but the daily was looking like it wanted to trigger the sell setup, which is we put in a series of higher lows. If we break underneath one of those higher lows, that would trigger the sell setup. We didn't do that. And what I was hoping for today was an inside bar so that we get a little bit better of a read on where that sell setup would trigger, because after a large red bar like this, you don't want to see this move kind of go from poking above all the way down to trigger a sell setup. Those often don't follow through or need another setup there. Okay, so what we have here is that inside bar. Notice the inside bar is threatening to kind of take out the top there, and so if it does kind of take out the top, then no bearish bias, and we'll have to wait and see when that daily sell setup, when that might actually trigger. So we do have the daily retracement here in the context of this recent downtrend, right? So the daily sell setup is still kind of setting up, has yet to trigger, but now going into tomorrow underneath today's low is where it will trigger, but it's going to be right into this hourly support. So unlike what we had last week, which was this kind of downtrend here, creates a pivot and never takes it out, creates a pivot, never takes it out. So we just kind of stayed bearish until it actually took it out here, which is where we were no longer bearish, right? We can see that there's a little bit more conflict going on as far as the trend that's in place, but it does look like we are getting more and more bullish. So going into tomorrow, neutral to bullish, especially if we kind of gap up a little bit over here on the Qs over this 219.61, I would expect sell-offs to get bought and that hourly trend to continue. Okay, if we get another kind of inside bar, that wouldn't be surprising either, because of the conflict that we have between the hourly and the daily. Okay, so neutral to bullish going into tomorrow. We haven't really resumed the hourly uptrend, but it is looking like we are going to break above. Okay, so that's the read on the Qs and the SPY. Very, very similar charts on the daily and the hourly. Okay, so going into tomorrow, neutral to bullish. All right, let's talk about today's play on the CDLX. And usually when I ask this question, usually people get it, because it is a very, very powerful type of gap. Okay, so definitely a pro gap, right? Professional gap has been moving up recently and then gapping down. We also had an uptrend on the weekly and the monthly, so it's also gapping against the long-term trend. So that definitely makes it professional. That definitely makes it so that we want to play with the gap. We want to short it. Okay, now what makes this gap a little bit special is that we got an island reversal. We're leaving behind this initially gapped up, never filled the gap, and now we're gapping down. Anybody who was a participant in this long and happened to still have some today is definitely in some pain, right? So that is the island reversal. If this had maybe gapped down from up here or somewhere during this island, then we would also have an island reversal. Okay, so it's easy to see why it's called that. What we are leaving behind is this island. It's a very, very powerful gap, but we don't get it all that often, especially really good ones. And so that may be why it didn't really come to people's minds right away. Okay, so I'll show you kind of a couple things about the island reversal that you also want to look for. Okay, which is in this case here, we get the gap up, we create the island. Notice how it gaps down here, but it's not leaving the entire island behind. These, right, while they can get some follow through, especially with decent shock value, not so sure which way it's going to go, because while we are gapping down into support. Now sometimes they'll gap down and they'll gap down into the void area. Again, it's not as easy. It's better than this gapping into support, but then when it gaps into the void area, it's not too bad. What I like the most for these island reversals is that they gap even below, or if the case of a gap up, gap far above where the initial island came from. So in this case, if this were going to leave this island behind, I want it gapping even below prior to where it was before this was created. I really wanted to create that distance, right, from that island, right? So an even better example that we had on the PGR here, which was not that recent, but one that was so nice that it always kind of sticks out for me, and that is this one in here. Okay, notice how the island was created here. We had the gap up, stayed above in that area, and then when we gap down, right, we gap down even below where this came from, right? And so you can see kind of the follow through. So if that's what I'm looking for, if that's what I like to see in these island reversals, right, that's what we got in the CDLX. Okay, the CDLX gapping far below where it was prior to creating this gap up in this island up here. Okay, so once we get the gap down, and it's you can look aggressively for some kind of entry. Here was the entry on the CDLX. Okay, initially moved up, tried to make a new high just barely, and then got this nice consolidation in here. The downside to this CDLX was that the size of the stop, even though these bars look small here, was pretty big. It was actually a $2.50 stop because I size it to 58.20 by 50 or by 60.50. I gave it to like 60.50 and then I got filled like 58.10. This CDLX really like this gap. It's the kind of thing like that PGR that we saw earlier. I expect to close at the lows, right? And the fact that this is closing at the lows when the Qs moved up, 4+%, SPY moved up over 4.25, right? And that this is closing at the lows tells you this was going to do this in a bullish market, a bearish market, or a bearish day and a sideways day, because this did it even when the market, right, moved up as much as it did. So I thought it was the most powerful gap that we had today, especially to the downside. Definitely the most shock value in this gap. And so got some pretty nice follow through early on. Unfortunately, on the kind of runner there, I did get shaken out. So believe it or not, this bar did get me out because as you know, those of you that plays with me and manage as I do, we just use the 65 here on the runner, and that shook us out right there. Now, sometimes it's going to happen, but it's something that this kind of shakeout is pretty typical. Volume came in, big spike, zero follow through. You can see it puts in an inside bar and then goes right back down. Now, those you can get back in, right? And those we're going to see all the time. Like this as a typical kind of shakeout is pretty textbook. It's pretty close to what you're going to see. So you can see the move up, shake people out, and then there's no follow through whatsoever, and then right from there goes right back down and down and down, and then eventually gets back to new lows. So it would have been nice to not get shaken out. That first drop though was not too bad. Yeah, it was like a almost $5 drop, like I think from the start, but like I said, it was a rather large stop, so that kind of worked against it. This thing does move quite a bit, so I guess that's also kind of to be expected. Okay, so would be nice if we had these all the time, but like I said, I think because we don't get them all that often, it's probably why some people weren't quite as ready to identify it. But when we do, they typically give really, really nice follow through. Okay, because there's a lot of shock value in this kind of gap. Okay, all right. Hope you did well today. All right, that's gonna do it for today's market wrap, and we'll be back at it tomorrow. Have a good evening.